Imagine an RPG set in a post-apocalyptic world where all the women have disappeared in a great white flash. With no way to reproduce, the men have resorted to passing their time through warlording, drug taking, or pretending to be Power Rangers. Add into the mix that suddenly a woman's been found and the wasteland is cannibalising itself to get hold of her, and you've got a story that I can't even think of anything remotely similar in modern gaming. Lisa the Painful follows Brad Armstrong, a balding, middle-aged man who finds himself adopting the last surviving girl in the world and journeying to search for her when she's taken from him. Along the way, the player's forced to make choices that can have drastic effects on Brad, his party, or the world around him. The game takes heavy inspiration from Earthbound in both its art style and the use of comic relief in quite serious, bleak moments. The game covers quite dark and serious tones, and so trigger warnings for any sort of abuse, as the setup might have suggested. We're going to dive into this game piece by piece, and I found it thoroughly enjoyable, though half of what makes it enjoyable also makes it hard to talk about. It's got a very well done and nuanced story, from the comedic timing to the serious things covered, and the characters within. It was produced in 2014 almost entirely by Austin Jorgensen from Dingaling Productions, and is actually part 2 of the 3-part Lisa series, though it can be played fully standalone. Let's look at it component by component, as there's quite a lot of cool and unique design choices to examine. The game has so much style to back its substance that it's definitely worth a gander. Hell, even the fan games are worth a gander. It's got a very active, somewhat cult-like community. Gameplay comes in 2 parts, turn-based combat and 2D side-scrolling on an overworld. The overworld itself can be quite complex, with a lot of areas having a ton of verticality or multiple routes branching off them. I really wished it had a map in-game. At one point, you also get a bike, which aids in crossing different kinds of gaps and moving around in style, and this just opens up even more of the map. The environment's quite cool, with various settlements, bars, or massively unique areas. In that sense, we're talking about Yakuza bathhouses, construction yards where you have to avoid linebackers charging around. They play around a lot with this, and the overall gameplay loop stays from getting stale, even including events where you get ambushed or can avoid combat entirely if you're smart. I feel like the overworld hated me at times, and there were so many instances where I walked off a cliff on accident because there was a sheer drop 2 tiles from the start of the screen, and that did fuck me off monumentally. There were quite a few moments where I could see a combatant up ahead and I didn't really want to fight, and there was tension built, and at the end of the day it's done well. Saving is done at save crows in most areas, and there's a lot of, ooh, can I make it to the save point or shall I backtrack and recoup first? Alongside this, there's various campfires you can find around which will full health your party, but come at a risk of various events depending where they are. This ranges from mundane, spiders crawl into the camp and poison everyone, to the more annoying, one of your party members has been kidnapped, or just flat out abandoned you. There's a couple of risk-free campfires, but they're either out of the way or locked further into the game. A lot of times when you need to rest, you get to speak with your party members sort of at random, and it does help you immerse in the world. I was invested in some of these characters. The real crunchy stuff is the turn-based combat, and it's got your average trappings for a turn-based RPG. You have a variety of options from basic attacks to skills to combat items. From the 30 companions you can recruit in the game, there's a whole host of builds you can go for as you progress, from big smacky AoE attacks to a series of pokes or dances that apply status effects. One of the downsides I noticed was that once I'd settled on a party, I only really swapped members out to counter different boss resistances, and that was only really after they beat me. A lot of times I'd be using the same sequence of attacks on repeat for multiple fights in succession without really having to change tactic. It's fairly easy to brute force through, with a few exceptions, and it became a bit of an auto-clicker in that regard. Something to note is the dial combo system, which I've not really seen anywhere else. This allows players to press a sequence of keys to either do a combo or a special attack if a specific set of keys is pressed. Now, I didn't make the most use of this after the first few levels of the character, because you can also access a lot of these abilities through the skills menu. The combat contains a lot of variety in terms of opponents and their party setups, and it was thoroughly entertaining throughout. Sometimes you're fighting some horrid mutant, and other times a couple of McDonald's bouncers. This game has that weird Earthbound feeling going for it. I did encounter a couple of times where combat was annoying, specifically entering the final boss without enough recovery items, which was my own fault, or when certain elite enemies can permanently kill members of your party. It was cool to have that suspense, but when I lost some of my favourites, I got quite mad. I'd spent ages levelling some of these people up. The graphics and sound are both incredibly bizarre but inherently well done. Graphics wise, you can see the influence from Earthbound and Mother within the sprite work, though saying that, this game has its own unique look and aesthetic. The game manages to cover so many graphic themes that I feel you wouldn't have been able to cover without the art style softening it for the player. The aesthetic comes off as comical, almost childlike, until it doesn't. It makes for a very unique experience and everything looks cool as fuck. You can clearly see what they were going with, and I think it takes a bit of edge off the game. When it comes to the sound design and SFX are incredibly well done. Again, going with this sort of childlike whimsy, large number of squeaks and horns and comical noises work to offset some darker notes. I feel like I'm playing a game from a different time period, but it doesn't feel old either. The combat music can be very motivating, and when the game wants to make me feel scared or emotional, it uses the music in really great ways to do that. There's also a few tracks I'd like to put in the what the fuck is this bucket, such as the wrestling area, having a track sampling Shenmue's combat sounds. Or the neon rave music. It's a mixed bag, and the game feels like a fever dream most of the time, but a very memorable, very high energy fever dream, so it has that going for it. The story follows Brad after establishing his childhood traumas and skipping ahead to modern day. The White Flash has taken out all known women to the land, and Brad is an addict of the drug Joy, a powerful combat stimulant that allows users to feel nothing at all. Throughout Brad's journey to rescue the last surviving woman, we encounter various different warlords and groups, have some inter-party politics, and deal with some ghosts from Brad's past. You can expect spoilers from this point on, as we go from baby Brad to shirtless Brad pretty much imminently. The game starts off a bit funny. I mean, just look at this menu. When you get into the game, someone's getting battered off screen, and our main man Brad steps in and takes the beating for them. We're thanked for our efforts, and the only way we really have to walk is to the right. Seems it's a case of boys being boys as we head back home through the suburbs. Getting home, Brad encounters Marty, his abusive father and a reoccurring character in the series. When we sleep, time skips ahead. Meet Brad with hair, a joy addict who finds the last living girl on the planet and drops her on her head. The game has good humour to balance out its more serious moments. Now, it turns out Brad now lives with the boys he grew up with, and everyone looks much bigger. They check the baby's gender, and each of them has bright ideas of what to do with this knowledge, though Brad muscles in and says they're looking after her. He flat out refuses to give her away. When he tries to throw away his drugs too, that doesn't work. I hope he doesn't end up like Marty. Now, the gang dig a hidden floor under their house to hide the girl, and we're into a bit of a montage. Throughout her youth, Brad is seen to be a bit of an absent father, despite being so strong-headed when he found her. One time, she tries to explore outside, and Brad scolds her, later masking her so that she can. There's some lovely memories of her putting makeup on her dad and her uncles, but really it is a sad upbringing. She lives in a cellar, and she's not allowed to go outside. It's a sad time for Brad too, the little tweaker, and after one binge or another, Brad finally wakes up and the game begins properly. We hear a bark and go and rescue a man from a nearby tree. The sprite work so far had the game stand out to me, but the combat, oh boy. Come listen to this overstimulation. The music in most combat encounters is just about as wild as this, and our fight against Cheese Legs here serves as our tutorial for combat. Brad at his level only has access to the dial but no combos to go with it, so just spam a load of keys and save Terry. We're presented the choice here between playing normally or extra hard pain mode and we advance. This will be a pain mode run. The main differences between that and the norm is that the save crows aren't reusable, new enemies appear and some stats are shifted around. Oh, and we get an epilogue to the ending. Now the man in the tree was Terry Hintz, Lord of the Tutorial. He's a weak party member who mainly serves to buff and debuff the enemy, though as he levels he becomes much more powerful, and hey, right, 2 guys are better than 1, right? We head back to Brad's shack, saving as we do, and so far so good, you've got my interest game. Approaching the shack, well... The girl's gone and our quest has begun. Just us and Terry. Brad and Terry Adventure Time. BradandTerry.com. Brad and Terry, in all seriousness, the situation's fucked. We've got one route to go really, and that's following the cliff straight down. Our first roadblock is Walter's Stingray, a spear-wielding bandit, and our first example of party combat. Use Brad's offensive skills and Terry's support abilities and you should be fine. You could also use Terry to cob glass bottles at the man, which also works. Throughout our time in Olathe, we'll encounter many enemies, and figuring out how your companions work is paramount to survival. Some don't do any combat damage, some only do combat damage. Some need a different source other than mana, some don't need mana, it's a bit weird. We enter the caves near Brad's house to advance further, and there's a funny encounter with us walking past a corpse for it to be alive and ask us to come back. Look-see. The environments are fairly basic, but with some charm to them, and you can clearly see where people have been making their little homeless camps. To leave the caves, we need to fight Sugar Mountain. Again, follow the similar route of Brad being your DPS and Terry being your support and you should be fine. He can throw firebombs which can inflict burning and hit everyone, but they're not a big hassle right now. Something to note is whenever you defeat an enemy, they give a little speech as they die, and some of these can be quite funny. After the caves, we get the joy of getting hit by a car. We meet Chris Colombo, and the kids from the beginning who beat the crap out of us are also grown up. We're given the choice between sacrificing Terry or all of our possessions. Occasionally you'll get ultimatums like this in the story. Hell, later on it includes potentially losing your arms or your whole party, and it's up to the player to decide what's worth to them. In this instance, I picked Terry because, 2 party members is better than 1, and we've not actually picked up that many items. Advancing further, we make it to Crossroads 1, and the game is split into 3 Crossroads areas with a bunch of paths sprouting off. You can figure these as mini hubs. Complete the tasks around each hub and you can get to the next crossroad. A funny interaction is when we get in is with Bobby Diddle. We can actually jump over his attack trigger, and if we talk to him, he asks us to step into it. He looks like that meme from online, I forget the guy's name. He's a regular mook, give him his lumps and you can push on. I recommend saving whenever you can, even on painful mode. Save points are few and far between, and you'd hate to be caught out. It's a real pain backtracking in this sort of game. The red skulls all over indicate that Rando's army has taken over, the warlord with the most power, the warlord that one of Buddy's uncles suggested handing her over to. There's various factions in flux throughout Olathe, but Rando's army are the most organised we'll encounter, or at least the largest should I say, they're quite unorganised. And we'll see some of the members more directly soon, but for now let's look at Crossroads 1 on a larger scale. Crossroads 1 is our first hub area, and there's over 10 different branches, including the way we've come and the way we're headed. In theory, you could head whichever way you want first, though there's some horrible things lurking around, and so there is an ideal route through. Story-wise, we have to find a way inside that truck that's blocking us to the right, though we will be expanding further into party members and Brad's past as we plough through. Hell, apparently the girl is in this zone, so we might get lucky, right? Right? Starting off, we head through the nearby caves to Aurora Town. It's generally the first area that players go just by osmosis, and well, we need to pick up some more party members. To the left of Aurora Town you can find Nern, an ex-librarian who will serve as a bit of a mana rock for our party. He's got this recurring joke of being a bit of a chatterbox, prattling on even when Brad's starting to nod off, constantly going on tangents and getting annoyed at us for boring him. I'll show you here. We actually have to walk away first before he's recruitable. And if we head to just before Aurora Town, we can meet Rage, who takes a few too many magazines for us to recruit at this stage. Oh yeah, magazines. With all the women gone and the world in apocalypse, the currency of choice here is dirty magazines, a truly divine thing in a world filled only with men. Rage might be too expensive, but across from him is Olathe, an archer who I find to be one of my favourite damage dealers in the game. If I can keep him for a whole playthrough, I tend to. He uses TP instead of mana. It's a similar resource that fills as he attacks, or if another party member has an ability that can fill it for him. TP party members tend to do a lot of damage, with the trade-off being their skills cost TP to use. The TP bar starts empty in most combats, or just, with a few dots in it, and mana bars tend to start full if you've rested. Now when we hit Aurora Town proper, we can see this place is just full of scruffs trying to get on with life. There's posters of Buddy about the place, and it seems like she's the hot news of the area, though there's no sign of her here just yet. Fall on these blokes and then we can head off to the right place. We get invited to an abandoned building to play cards, and well, we first stop off at a dojo on the other side of the building to get ourselves some stat upgrades by falling a lot, and then we can head inside.
Six and a half hours later.
A load of people in Joy masks come and give us these drugs. Remember the guy's face in the middle? That's Buzzo, and he's not a nice guy at all. As mentioned before, Joy helps us to feel nothing both inside and outside of combat, and can give us lovely advantages such as double damage and higher soak. It does also come with withdrawals, so use it sparingly. Heading back, we can see a man from earlier has enjoyed his joy too much and turned into a joy mutant. These creatures are the result of joy overuse, but they're worth a fat amount of XP and they tend to drop the pills themselves. They do sometimes have a habit of permanently killing your party members, so you have to be careful. Story-wise though, we're kind of pulling at threads looking for Buddy while we're lacking a whole lot of direction. Hell, even the people you meet tend to not have any story significance. Just get immersed in Olathe, take your joy and push on. I could see this turning away some players, the lack of direction, but in these sort of games, you kind of know what you're getting into. Heading back to the hub, we do get ambushed. Things like this happen from time to time, but with a full party, Big Pancake Norton eats shit. With the party previously mentioned, we can push forward into slightly harder areas of the hub. We head to an area called New Roads in hopes of getting some XP and some delicious firebombs. It's our first exposure to the members of the Rando army, and they try to throw their weight around us. Seemingly doing what they want against their commander's orders, it speaks to the organisation as a whole and what the warbands get up to when the spotlight isn't on them. This is our first multi-opponent fight. Now until we have the ability to attack multiple opponents with one attack, I tend to just pile in on whoever looks the meanest. Given the art style of the game, this is sometimes deceptive, but for this specific fight it works wonders. Without Olathe and Nern, we couldn't have gotten close to beating these dudes, and combat is very unforgiving. The New Paths area, at a glance, is seemingly unoccupied. There's Rando flags but no real presence, and the whole area is a bit of a scavenger hunt for Rando troops. See, there's a gang of people here, a non-Rando gang called the Schoolboy Shufflers, and they want us to get rid of the Randos. By doing such, we can access a diesel generator from which we can make Molotovs. We just siphon the petrol out. Now, I'm sure there's a moral choice here, but I'm not a nice bloke, and Brad definitely isn't, and we need those firebombs for what's to come, so sorry Rando soldiers. The playground comes next, and that's a fun area. We actually have to go there for a movement item, Metroidvania style. We're greeted with turn back signs, and if we ignore them, snakes can attack us from the long grass, and they're actually a bit rough, but easily defeated in a few rounds. They leave us on low health, and so we make use of a bonfire here. Like, fuck the risks, we definitely need full health for what's coming next. The random event I got this time was Olathe and Brad talking about their addictions, and well, take a look. That's what we call foreshadowing, folks. Moving on, we encounter Charmy, a joy mutant who seems quite passive. He's unfortunately blocking our access to the push bike, and he can be quite a bit of trouble. Most rounds he won't do anything horrible, and sometimes won't do anything at all, but like all joy mutants, he's capable of it. Capable in those beady little eyes. We make good use of the joy we got from earlier, and the firebombs make light work of him. Our reward is a bike. Not only can we use this for speed, we can also use it to cross single tile gaps. This opens up some areas from earlier in the game, but more importantly lets us advance forward to some actual areas of plot significance. We're heading to the Joy Factory, baby! And through our next door we meet Booker Clinton. He exists just to tell us the pretty boys have the girl in an abandoned factory nearby. Give him his birthday beats and we can use our new bike to ride off towards her. And the next area is full of these men in red barrels that will start combat if they hit us. They're completely avoidable and actually a decent source of XP, but it's an alright change to a general overworld formula. A random character, Scott Lawson, appears to kick us in the groin, and we get to see an orb-headed man dancing to some beats in between getting our own revenge. After these almost random distractions, we fight our way closer to the Joy Factory, and it's locked with rando goons trying to break in. With our trusty bike, we can land on top of the factory and enter that way. The factory is occupied by the magnificent Men's Mains Club. The thing that links the warband is their love of luscious locks. In our next harebrained scheme, we comb on over to their leader in hope of finding the girl. Sadly, we're left high and blow-dried. As Brad is bald, they take quite a lot of offence and we get to fight the boss of Area 1. It makes it 10 times easier if you have firebombs to throw at them because hair is flammable. And in this playthrough, I mulch them. In previous playthroughs, I remember them giving me trouble and not even on pain mode, so never doubt the impact of elements. Busting into a back room, Buddy isn't there, but the driver of the truck blocking us from Area 2 is. On the way back, we get a little flashback to Brad's youth with his pal Sticky trying to keep him off drugs. Brad's struggle with joy is a central theme to the game, drug abuse in general is. In the same breath, we can see the most ridiculous hanging of that dancing man, and we leave the music on. He'd want that. The truck lets us fast travel between hub areas, though moving on we get rolling. We do see a flashback of his sister, Lisa, the namesake of the game, and Brad has latched onto Buddy because of some past failing with his sister still yet to be revealed. His motives are selfish, even if they seem on the surface not to be. We have a little slap and tickle with these two gentlemen, and on regular mode there's only one of them, but buffed up we're perfectly capable of sending them to the Shadow Realm. After passing through the caves they're guarding, we get to see a man pinching one off. Then after that we see Uncle Rick, and he makes the point that it's selfish of Brad to lock Buddy away, that she could save the world as the last woman. While this 100% wouldn't work as a biologist, it's probably still a more virtuous pursuit, and there's an argument for both sides. Brad's overuse of joy does lead him to blacking out and seeing red, and we get a bit of that when we try to get the info out of Rick. We're on a bit of a narrative seesaw here, like the fact we just had that after a guy was showing his ass, and then we get this mad balance between silly moments and super serious ones. The narrative pacing is something unique to Lisa. I do quite enjoy it though. Afterwards, we also encounter Buzzo and his Joy Folk one more time. He gives us the choice between Terry and our arm, and well, Terry's taking up a party slot, so Brad loses his arm for him. Through the game, you have the choice to lose limbs, party members, and possessions at important points like this, and it definitely raises the stakes of the whole trip. These choices are unavoidable. They're very impactful parts of the story, and it seems this Buzzo character has some sort of vendetta against us. All will be revealed, but first, motorbikes. We accidentally eat shit hitting Rando himself at the top warlord in the area. His troops lose all discipline though as soon as he disappears, and similar to the goons from before, they try and rob us, like the power-hungry dudes they are. The Rando army men are all pussies, and they're in it for their own gain, whereas Rando himself seems to be an alright guy. After that, we get the worst section of the game. Roulette is what gates off our entrance to Area 2, Russian roulette specifically. 3 rounds of using our party members and random chance. This part of the game sucks, it's unavoidable and there's no items that help. I get what they were going for, like themes of sacrifice and pushing on no matter what, raising the stakes and just punishing the player for playing, but my god, like nothing sucks more than getting punished because a dice roll doesn't go my way. I could sit here and seethe about the times I've blasted through my whole party here, losing people go by go, or when I've lost a few characters and decided, well, I better just carry on instead of loading back in case I lose more. It sucks. If I could cut any part, it would be this bit. There should be some sort of workaround. There's also a companion you can get here that I'll probably never ever see if you play additional optional rounds, and it can eat my ass. When we get out of here, we hit Area 2 and we get to meet the Salvation Rangers, a group of NPCs who have taken to filling the void of having no purpose by recreating Power Ranger shows. They even have a couple of reoccurring villains throughout the game. The Pink Ranger doesn't seem too invested, and if we help them against Blake the Snake, we can advance their questline. Now before we go on, I wanted to insert a little pause here while we show an area branching off from the last hub that I never got to cover. Delicious. Now with that out of the way, Area 2. Crossroads 2 is our second hub area, and you're seeing a theme here. There's a whole lot to visit here, from a giant construction site to another martial arts dojo. How about a fish village, or a place where they worship a McDonald's like it's some divine site? The blockage for this area is a rando blockade. There's not a whole lot of direction for how we unblock it, but essentially we need to set another group on them. The girl isn't present in this zone either, though various posters and flashbacks hint at the Wasteland's combined effort to find her. Firstly, we head to the construction site to get TNT to unblock some of these rocked over areas. Going through some of the caves before the zone, I found a secret cubby with a handmade doll in it, and well, seems this man didn't like us taking to his wife. The combat tends to be quite simple in these one-on-one encounters now, but I'll mention if anything special happens. There's this banana-themed gang in this cave, and they've just lost all hope in living. I get it, no woman around, world's doomed, right? Anyway, to construction. This area consists of a huge steel scaffold where we're avoiding linebackers and hammer throwers. It's not too rough, and there's a few optional routes you can take if you want to see some secret-y bits, like our friends the Salvation Rangers. We can actually recruit the Pink Ranger here, very nice. Going back on the beaten path, we do a bit more pseudo parkour to get across the building site until we find an excavator with keys left in it. I hope you can guess what comes next. From the content to the visuals and the audio, the plot of Lisa is like a fever dream. There is a central plot thread going throughout, but we're almost always going on a series of grand adventures, having to stop constantly our search for Buddy to explore all these other zones. Occasionally we'll get flashes to other people's stories for comedic effect, and the game can be incredibly funny. And at no point while playing did I feel mad I was getting thrown in all these directions, it was just part of the experience. Smash through using the killdozer, collect the TNT, and teleport back to Hub 2. We've got some rocks to smash through. We went off the beaten path to use the TNT. We can now use this to open up some more paths. Our next stop is Muddy Waters, a swamp zone. There's no rocks blocking this area, but it does contain some fun stuff. Firstly, the snakes are back and can attack us here. While playing, I always had this sense of dread when they came up. I thought they'd party wipe me. There's also a camo man crawling around. During one of the area transitions, we could see the memory of Brad and his former karate students. One kid he lets join for free. Remember that little blonde mullet? And if we drop down this secret hole, we could see a village of fish people. Not much is found here, but we could buy some green paste to recruit another party member later, steal their MacGuffin to get into a bit of hot water with their legal system, and we can recruit Harvey. He provides us with some legal representation. He also provides us with an Uzi and water magic, and I found him to be fairly solid. I'm not sure the lore implications of these fishmen living here, but it's not really touched on in this game. Heading back to the surface, the worst happened. A random event caused Olan to leave the party. Brad introduced him to Joy, and we could actually find him in an earlier area now. But for now, we head east to find the honeybees, a bunch of drag queens making some money with the world's oldest profession. They're hard as nails, and if you assist them, you can recruit Mr. Baseball Bat too. It's a bit of a weird experience. It plays out like combat to, well, climax. We're way too far off the beaten path. Now there's a few other areas in Area 2, including Skull Town, where we can see the Rangers again, and Bob's Dojo, both fun areas we're going to gloss over as we're going to focus on finding Buddy for the story of this video. When I say we're glossing, I mean we're glossing over a lot, like various party events, a secret island with a ghost boy. It's just not relevant to the main story despite it being really fun and unique, and I feel like we need to get back on the rails, but I recommend when you play the game, if you play the game, to go through all this, and hopefully this video leaves some stuff hidden for you. We're heading to Olathe, a holy land where the men are prostrate in prayer. A double cheeseburger, a large fries, all gifts from God. The men here pray to the voice of God, a drive-through speaker, and well, take a look. To get to Wally's, we have to fight through a couple of workers and climb up a nearby cliff. The fight against the workers is a bit of a roadblock if you're not leveled up enough. Both of them hit like trucks, but luckily if you die it's not permanent for this specific fight. There's a few others like that in the game, but it's kind of hard to tell which is which going into them. Come back when you're ready and begin the climb. Maybe we'll get some answers soon for Brad. The climb is fairly uneventful, with the occasional deer getting in the way of what is quite a long climb. They go down quite easy, and that's until we find Little Nuggy. He goes down like a pint of piss, bitter, horrid aftertaste. He's got some rough moves and access to Fatal Chomp, which can take out a party member permanently. His combat encounter marks about the halfway point up this climb. There's no real strategy with him besides avoid using fire attacks, as he's resistant. He's also very Joy Mutant-like. He might be one, you don't really know because he's got the costume on, but he does fight like one, so I'm going to assume so. Eventually he goes down and we continue our climb. At the top we decide to rest next to the McDonald's, and I got a 4-minute story from Nern about his history. It's unrelated to the main plot, but I found it quite funny, and I'm going to save it for a post-credit scene, as we instead enter the McDonald's, or Wally's as it's called. It's full of meat and decay, and Wally attacks us for killing Little Nuggy. Wally is a very hard fight. Now I use Nern, Carp and Harvey for this fight to try and blast out as much DPS as possible. Wally is the deity of this village, providing them with McDonald's from the heavens. We rock his shit, and throughout the fight his mask begins to crack, revealing the rotten meat underneath. The game is very good at visual storytelling and leaves a lot of it to the player's imagination, such as, is he a Joy Mutant? Is he a hallucination? Maybe he's an actual deity. Who knows? To make things even more interesting, after we beat him, things keep getting stranger. We crawl through caverns of meat filled with spider versions of Brad's father Marty, and they don't talk to us or anything, but it's clear something's going on to make Brad see all this. Marty was heavily abusive to him and his sister Lisa, and his presence here almost confirms that to the player. Once we get out, we see Buddy's mask on a nearby tree and, well, looks like we found her, and I said she wasn't in this zone. She's hiding here because Uncle Sticky told her to. Her choice of wording implying that Sticky showed her how important she was. Brad takes that as he PDF filed her, though there's nothing to back that up, and I don't really feel like Sticky would. Going into the back cave, we see another hallucination of Sticky's dad, the camp ranger you can actually see earlier in the game in the first flashback. If you go out front, you get a lovely surprise. We're knocked out by Buzzo's Joy Boys, forced to take Joy in front of Buddy as some sort of sick revenge plot. One of his goons whacks her if we refuse, and we go in some sort of joy-induced OD, looking like the Third Impact or the Eclipse or something like that. We encounter a giant version of Sticky taunting us that he touched Buddy, and when we take him out we can wake up, seeing the aftermath of a conflict between the Joy Boys and the Rando goons. The Joy Boys were the group we needed to smash through Rando's blockade and open up Area 3. It's clear Buddy's been taken there by one of the groups, and her relationship with Brad further strained, so we do give chase. En route we see our childhood bully again, with a bit of a redux of the encounter from the last time. He's got Buddy's mask and is claiming he's got her too. Smack through his goons using the usual method, hallucinate again about your dead sister, and finally enter the funniest place in the game, the EWC. Stupidest soundtrack going. This is where the WWE fans of the apocalypse have gathered. We can make a brief detour here to engage in some wrestling before pushing forward, and I'd recommend it. There's a whole subplot for 2 different title belts, each unlocking a new party member, and a series of rather tough solo or tag team wrestling matches, depending on which one you go for. One of the more unique party members, the Shock Lord, can be gathered here through that tag team. He's got one move, and it's a full AoE, full screen shock attack, but he's really good. Continue forward after this encounter to find Sticky and Rick from earlier. He's apparently survived his beating, and you could choose to spare them or kill them. Either option works, though if you let them live, be prepared for revenge. Push forward even further to get ambushed by Buzzo again, and give it a choice between him cutting Buddy or killing all your party members. Honestly, she hates me already. I've got a full party in a position that I like, so sorry kid. Chasing after him gives us a choice between cutting off an arm or losing all of our possessions, weapons, magazines, the lot, so I take the arm loss in this case, but Buzzo clearly hates us. He despises us and he wants revenge for whatever we did to some unknown woman. Spoilers, we let Brad's sister die. With our bed made, we can finally lie in it in the final hub, Crossroads 3. Now, whenever we lose a limb or something like that, it does drastically tank our stats. It even limits some of the moves we can use, but I'm not losing all my weapons and gear, sorry there. Crossroads 3 is an area with some very clear goals. Buddy has stolen a boat and left, things look bleak for Brad's mental state, his body and his relationships, something mirrored by the background music being slowed down compared to the other zones. We meet Tardy Hernandez, a brother to the other boatman and truck driver, and we need to collect various boat parts to chase after Buddy on sea. To do this we need a fan, a toolbox, a sail and some wood. We also want to stock up on healing items or you'll end up painfully stuck as I was when I last played through this. The fan is located in a Yakuza style bathhouse, the Devil's Bathhouse. It's a maze of different rooms littered with Marty spiders. There's a group of Yakuza men blocking our access to the fan, if Yakuza man's a word. I think it's just Yakuza, isn't it? And a Joy Mutant blocking access to the second set of truck keys, gating a secret boss. We'll come back to any secrets after this part of the story, so navigate the maze, find Han Tsunami and his gang. The way to fight big groups at this point in the game is big screen AoE damage. Brad's home run head slide is a particularly high level ability that can knock enemies over, making them skip their turn as well as taking damage. Pair that with Shocklord's Grand Slam and you're golden. Smash, smash, smash. This gets us the fan. The toolbox is hidden above a snow area, and to get there we have to do some more spelunking. We need to deal with a Joy Mutant named Herb because we're on pain mode, and Joy Mutants being able to take out your party members should be approached with caution. After him, there's a bit of an overworld navigation, avoiding sliding bomb enemies and getting shot at by stationary snowmen. I remember seeing a review of this game before where someone mentioned it's similarly to Earthbound, being in the enemy design and the fact that everything can kill you. Snowmen with guns, dustbin people, etc. And the area feels the most like that. At the top, well, I think it's the midpoint actually, of the snowy peak, we get to meet a gang of fellas that have heard about Brad kicking everyone's ass. The man, Buffalo Van Dyke, has an obsession with American football and will attack you with attacks mirroring that. His team acting like a D-line as he swoops in and makes plays. Focus on him with your DPS, use the AoE attacks to hit everyone. Eventually, he'll even call out to them for being out of position or not being team players, and upon defeat, he'll get angry at his boys, praise Brad for his teamwork and join our party. After getting the toolbox, I headed right thinking, hey, there's more snow here, let's take a look, right? I then immediately decided to turn around, like fuck this guy, he gave me the willies, and I think in that clip I probably just missed him by a tile. The sail is hidden in Hollywood, an area with the main mechanic being these seesaws that we can jump on and fly around. There's some fun platforming and even a cameo from the Salvation Rangers. No weird hallucinations or signs of Buddy though. On pain mode our boss fight is against Hawk the Joy Mutant. On regular mode he's a normal human man. He's more than capable of permanently wiping your party on either mode, so be careful. He took Shocklord out for me and I wanted to cry, like he carried me so hard in this section, but I wasn't loading back to the start of the zone to save him. Like all trials thus far we push on, this time with a sail in hand. Painful immerses you in Brad's struggle by letting you know how rough the world is and how much it wants to kill you. The charming visuals and sounds serve to soften this, but it's still velvet wrapping an iron fist. It hurts. The final item is wood. It's hidden at Blood Moon Mountain. It's a Native American themed area that reminded me of the Sephoria River from Elden Ring. Blood Mountain is a large climb with some nutty visuals. Enemies appear out of thin air and upon defeat provide some hidden messages. Quotes such as, "The shadow of the father howls into the night," "He birthed her, he will have her," and "You've met him," all referring to the secret antagonist, Dr. Yado. He plays the trumpet in the background of a lot of areas, controlling the Joy Mutants. The DLC later reveals he's responsible for fathering Buddy, and for such a significant character, he's not really touched on in this game at all. but the lore is there and you can find him. He's more prevalent in the DLC though. At the top of Blood Moon Mountain is Bloodiest Wolf. He's the tree's protector. He goes down like a light whenever I've fought him, though the wiki claims he can kill your party members, so you should probably be careful. With all of our boat supplies, we've got a couple of secrets previously mentioned to go dig at. Secrets. There's 2 secret mega fights in the game, the Devil Machine and one within Brad's Nightmare. This would be the last point in the game you can access them, so we'll take a quick detour before we go and find Buddy. To start with the Devil Machine, if we get the secret trucks from the bathhouse, hidden behind Beady the Joy Mutant, and head east of the wrestling area, we find a small settlement with a man warning us to steer clear of the Devil Machine. People don't return. Climbing down the cliffside, we find the machine is an old HGV truck. Inside is Mike Satan, the second most powerful enemy in the game. He hits us with a hard line of, "You people do not learn, curiosity just killed you." And he's rock hard to kill. He's based on the streamer Mike Mnemonic, and technically he was a Kickstarter reward. He's tough and an absolute tank and dishes out the damage. Only face him with a leveled up party spec to work together, and if you beat him, he drops his belt buckle, the best accessory of the game, raising stats more than most other equipment. The other secret is Brad's Nightmare. Head back to the very start of the game, to the camp right next to Brad's shack, and sleep there to enter the Nightmare realm. It's an absolute maze with various creepy sights and sounds, and it's very convoluted getting around here. I'm not going to show it all in this video. You've got Lisa crying, you've got these Joy Mutant alien things, spiders swarming the moon in front of Brad's house. Exploring the house gives us a redux of the first section of the game, with Brad getting shouted at by Marty. If you go to your room, you see a version of Marty made from Joy who verbally berates us. Checking Lisa's room reveals her fate. And if we enter Marty's room, we end up in this huge crimson area. There's a multi-stage mega boss here, and it's mega, with various waves of manifestations of your party members blocking your assault to Marty himself. You'll lose a lot of people here. Like, it's not a chance, it's guaranteed. And beating stage by stage gets you to the manifestation of Marty. This section's the hardest section in the game, it's made to be such, and uncover it at your own risk. I'm going to leave this area as is. I never beat Marty, but we can get back to the main story. The Deserted Island. Now we need to drop off our boat supplies to Tardy, and we get a nice sequence of sailing off to the deserted island. When we land, the boatman wants the girl for some action, and we have to put him down. We don't tolerate that over here. The island is littered with bottles, and I'd recommend picking them up. We need them for Molotovs later, and litter's not good. Whoever lives here is a hardcore alcoholic, and popping inside the cave, we get to meet him. We come face to face with Marty, Brad's dad. He seems to be looking after Buddy much better than he did Brad, though in our joy-induced rampage, we're forced to fight him. The fight's fairly simple, and it's more of a story fight. He's susceptible to CC, and as the fight progresses, Buddy comes in to shield him. His appearance changes as his health drains out, and the extra detail, leaning towards the importance of this fight, both from a narrative standpoint and a gaming standpoint. Brad is past his point of no return. The joy-filled rage has gripped him, and he can't turn back, not to the previous area, or from the path he walks. He's made his bed. Buddy knocks us out, and we're forced to use Tardy's corpse as a raft to chase after her, to the final zone of the game, Rando Land. We're nearly there. Rando Land is the final segment of the game, and when we arrive here, it's quiet. Perhaps we've entered through some back route, or the guards are missing elsewhere, but there's this long climb across a cliff face with nothing ascending the area besides the barbed wire and red skulls. Music's also quite enchanting while we're here, and it invoked a curiosity within me, shall we say. The first person we see is someone we've met before, Sticky's father, the old scout leader we've seen in Hallucinations, and he's currently going Freddy Krueger on Buddy to try and make his mark on the history of the world. It's messed up and we put him down like the scumbag he is. Buddy isn't too happy to see us, not even taking her poncho, rejecting our help and saying she doesn't want our help. All we do is hurt her and take everything from her. First our uncles, then Marty, and she's ended up worse off for all our chasing her. She calls us a failure and a monster, and the stress of it all actually changes our class of that to a failure. Our body feels strange, we get new attacks and can't take full damage. The joy abuse is finally catching up to us. We advance through what appears to be abandoned barracks, making firebombs, collecting rando rations, and soaking in that Buddy hates us. How nonsensical the game is, in the last act it's very good at putting you in Brad's shoes and making you feel the weight of his and your own choices. After walking long enough, the finale's about to begin. Crossing into the next area, we do catch up to Buddy. But she's flanked by what seems to be the bulk of Rando's forces. When we try and engage them, we have to face the party we left behind, each giving their reasons for working against us. Nern says we're on the wrong side of history, for example. Our joy-buffed form makes this a walk in the park, and we now have the move home run head slide, which absolutely minces most people, knocking them over and skipping their turn. Beating them weirdly rewards 0 XP, and if we didn't have a party, we're forced to fight the illusion of one, perhaps another joy hallucination. The fight with Rando's army is more gimmicky if anything, alternate between home run slide and diesel firebombs, rinse repeat. It's multi-waves of different parties, but they all go down pretty much the same. As we get deeper and deeper into the waves of them, they just become less and less confident, calling Brad a monster, even offering to give us Buddy. We develop new moves like screaming and crying, moves we've seen Joy Mutants use in the past, and we progress towards something more akin to a Joy Mutant than a normal man. It was cool to face an army like this, to see the background and the music reflects things are fucked up, and it feels so damn powerful after the game handed me my ass for so long. With the army gone, there's only one person left who could stop us, and I mean, look at the state Brad's in. Rando's hard. He's the toughest non-secret fight in the game, for me at least. If you didn't pack enough heals, he can be downright impossible, and if you wear the greasy poncho like I did, his fire attacks will mince you. Don't do that. He has multiple phases again where his sprite changes like that of Wally or Marty, and he feels like a good final boss here. He's hard, the stakes are high, and finally when we're done with him, he still has a lot of respect for Brad, thanking us for everything and calling us the best, like, what's with him? We'll come back to this after the credits, but before then, an absolutely mashed up Brad stalks on after Buddy, and I'll just let this play out. The credits hit the fourth wall and talk to us as a player, as Brad wakes up. Now a joy mutant, he crawls after Buddy, and her fate is left ambiguous until you play the DLC. With the end of pain mode comes an optional epilogue where we see Karate Master Brad and one of his students. Buzzo's whistling playing in the background. Buzzo fucked up this kid's face, all for whatever happened to Lisa. Buzzo tries to take revenge on us throughout the game because of the suicide of Lisa in the past. He also disfigures this kid who'd later grow up to become Rando. No wonder the guy was so respectful of Brad whenever he encountered him. Rando himself being an orphan who took Brad's last name and fights for his approval his whole life. This bombshell's a bit of a cherry on the cake, but it's, a sad story so far and painful. What a trip it was. We set out after Buddy and we found her, we kicked ass, made friends along the way, and after running through a cycle of generational trauma, but hey, swings and roundabouts, right? The story's both unique and bittersweet in weird ways, and I felt the mid-section of the game had some weird pacing, but it was still part of the charm. Like, we're constantly pulled away from the main plot with a lot of random happenings in Olathe. It's horrid seeing how the world treated Brad and how Buddy grew up and the world treated her. Her childhood robbed from her by those around her, it's fucked. The ending being a cliffhanger's good. I bought the DLC and I'm gonna play through it, but I wouldn't really change much at all with the story. Perhaps a bit more exposition on Buzzo and Rando, but besides that, it's a golden trip and I'd fully recommend it on plot alone. So I guess it comes down to what did I think of the game. In conclusion, I feel Lisa has earned the love of such a wide fan base for a reason. Sure, the music's cool, the graphics have this warm, pixely feeling that take you back to a younger time, away from life's problems. The story drives you straight back to that. It's accented by various offshoots into nonsensical areas and themes, fighting foes with no real relevance to Brad or Buddy, or just drunk old fucks trying to live their day to day. The main plotline's so well tailored, so dark in areas, yet incredibly hopeful in others that it's engaging. The gameplay doesn't exactly break new ground, besides maybe the number of party members you can get, or the dread some enemies can give you, but when you slap it all together, this tale of a bald man's poor babysitting choices is a real gem. I think the only things I'd really touch is to make some of the more important characters, make sure they're more better integrated into the plot, and to mix up the combat in a way where I'm not just mashing enter each time I fight someone new. But I'd seriously give it a 9 out of 10. I'd recommend you all check it out. Dingaling cooked up a storm here. Over and out, smooth brains.